Okay. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining the Let's Talk series. My name is Conrad Olmedo, the planning manager for the city of Burlington. The Let's Talk series is brought to you by the City of Burlington's Planning Department in partnership and collaboration with a lot of our local historic preservation partners, including the Walker Collaborative, the City of Burlington's Historic Preservation Commission, Preservation Burlington, Preservation North Carolina, and of course, the North Carolina State Historic Preservation Office. The Let's Talk series will involve three different webinars where we're going to be talking about process, standards, and a one-year touch base back on the recently adopted historic design standards. There'll also be an in-person walking tour of downtown Burlington in May, National Historic Preservation Month, as a celebration, and we're looking to have that be a remote opportunity as well. So stay tuned for that. You can sign up for these events on our city's website. If you go to burlingtonnc.gov and navigate to planning, we have a webpage there called Online Learning. And there you can register for all these events that are going to be taken throughout the rest of the year. Again, this is a webinar that's being recorded and will be available for later viewing. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Jamie Lawson, the City of Burlington's Planning Director, to give the first of our Let's Talk series on process. So it's all yours, Jamie.
All right, let me see if I can easily navigate to share my screen. Okay, I think. All right, are you able to see the presentation? You're on mute, Conrad. Oh, good. I see thumbs up. Awesome.
Yeah, I'm going to turn my camera off, Jamie, so it's all yours.
Okay. All right, sounds good. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm really excited about this opportunity to continue outreach and education to the community through these virtual workshops. This one today, as Conrad mentioned, will be to discuss the historic preservation application process. Okay, and so we're going to be going through the applicability, what districts apply to the historic preservation process, and describing also the applicability for the two different local historic districts that we have here in Burlington, as well as the local landmarks, the type of works that require review through the application process, the application requirements, and then some recommendations for successful applications. Okay, Conrad has indicated if you've got questions, feel free to raise your hand. He's going to be navigating in the background, and we'll try to either answer your questions through the chat, or we can take questions as we go. So if you've got a question, either raise your hand or put it in the chat, and we'll try to get to you. If not, then we'll answer questions at the end. All right, and so this slide just summarizes and shows the two different local historic districts that we have within the city. The one on the bottom left is the West Burlington Historic District that was established in 1987. That was the first district, and it's just northwest of our downtown. The second district is the Glencoe Mills District, which was added in 1999. Both of these are overlays to our local zoning districts. So it's if you look at it in terms of kind of like a cake, you've got the parcel layer on the bottom which are properties. Then you've got the zoning layer, which in most cases in these areas, it's medium density residential. And then you have the zoning overlay for the historic district, which applies to these sites, as well as the city's local landmarks. And this slide just summarizes the Carousel property, the Railroad Depot, the Mintler Coble House, Glencoe Mill Village, May Hosiery, and then most recently that we've got the Pickett Hosiery. So the standards also apply to these properties as well. And in West Davis, we've got about 180 roughly properties, and Glencoe has just under 50 properties. Now, we also have what's called national register properties. And I just wanted to bring this up, and this has the list of those districts as well. These districts are not governed by our local historic district. We don't review properties within these areas consistent with the overlay or the design standards. But there are areas that are recognized for national importance. So in terms of the design standards, this is a slide of the current design standards. The city was awarded a grant from the State Historic Preservation Office, and we completed an update to the Historic District Design Standards in August of last year. And we had a steering committee and stakeholders that helped to review this process. Ultimately, it was adopted by City Council, and again, it applies to those two local historic districts as well as the landmarks. And I'm going to go through in terms of the applications and the types of work, how that relates to this document. In the document itself, it's broken into various sections and chapters, and I'll have a table of contents a little bit later in the presentation. But for our purposes, in terms of discussion and in terms of applications, you're going to be looking for the matrix, I would say, call it, that's embedded in the document itself, and this helps to define. And I'll just flip through some of the pages, but this helps to define the types of work and different categories that we have in terms of work. Major works at top, minor works, and no COA. So these are the three different categories. This is the first page dealing with public right-of-ways, so not on private property. And then we've got different categories dealing with different types of work that would be defined in terms of major, minor, or no COAs. Starting with structures, dealing with roofs and walls and doors. There's all different breakdown in terms of the classification of work and how that's defined. And we'll talk about the aspects in terms of which process you would go down shortly. Other types of building features are regulated in some ways with application processes, as well as some landscaping and other types of site features. So a property owner or an applicant would search through this matrix to first kind of identify, where does their type of work fit. And certainly staff is available at any point from an advisory perspective to help with answering questions on determining that. And so in addition to those types of matrices, you'll see throughout the design standards language that deals with preservation, repair, and replacement. And I'm not going to be going through all of the pages associated with the design standards itself, but depending upon the type of work that you're going to be doing or anticipate doing, an applicant would need to address the different standards that would apply. And if they're not meeting the standards, address why there's a deviation. So this matrix hopefully clearly, and we'll go through it, but clearly helps to identify that there's a kind of a start and a finish on any of the types of applications. The start is up here on the green circle, where an applicant may initiate a conversation with staff. There's an optional pre-application conference meeting, and then there's an optional design committee, design review committee that can assist in that process. That's something that is in the works in terms of not a formal committee yet, but that's part of when we were updating the design standards that we were hoping to apply. That would be a useful tool for applicants and property owners to get informal, non-binding resources. So after the applicant initiates a conversation, or even they may investigate and research on their own, the type of application is then determined, and depending upon the type of application, you would work under the minor work here. Well, actually, in some cases, there would be types of work that may not be regulated, so that would fall under normal maintenance, where there's no COA required. And then there's the two other categories where you're following the minor work and following this matrix compared to the major work where you're following this matrix. So let's see, I go to the next slide. So yes, this is the first process, the normal maintenance, no COA. So normal maintenance, no COA is no oversight, or we may review what an applicant is doing, but you don't have to actually apply and receive a COA or certificate of appropriateness. And this is kind of just general maintenance. If you're painting your house on the outside, if you are caulking, installing house numbers, installing gutters with the same trim and same color as the trim. Lots of work falls under this normal maintenance. Staff and others reviewed as we were going through the update to the design standards, reviewed the different categories, and the intent was to hope to make the process easier for folks to continue to maintain and upgrade and upkeep their properties without having to go through too much paperwork and bureaucracy. One thing to note, we get this question asked a lot, is whether or not interior work is something that is regulated. And it is not. So we don't review anything pertaining to, what you're doing inside the house from an upgrade or modification perspective. Okay, and then Conrad helped me with these animations. So the second line of types of work is a minor modification. So just kind of working through this this matrix here, you would submit an application. You can submit an application two different ways, and I'll talk about that. I have a slide that shows that, but you can submit an application through our city's website, which is called the SmartGov portal. Those applications can come in fairly quickly through the system. We also still accept hard copies because that's in some cases what people are comfortable and familiar with. So either way, you would submit an application. Staff would technically have a number of days to review it for completeness. And then if it's complete for the minor COAs, those are reviewed by staff and reviewed administratively. And then if they are incomplete, we would ask the applicant to provide more information. The application, when it's approved, staff would then issue a certificate of appropriateness or approval. And we also complete a yellow card, which is a large placard, looks like this, that we would ask that the property owner or the applicant has that displayed while work is being performed. That helps to alert the residents and the neighbors and the community that that work that is either being done or will be done has been approved. So this just kind of summarizes the minor works, general maintenance, things that are routine. We are reviewing under a minor work. There were some changes in terms of the landscaping during the update to the design standards as well. So if there's trees that are dead or dying, we do ask that our city arborists go out to review and confirm that, and those would be treated as just general maintenance items and not minor work. So just some useful tips in terms of helpful for staff. Ideally, staff is reviewing the applications that come in. So it and oftentimes, you know, we're looking at multiple things, and it's helpful for us to see a complete picture when it's submitted, whether it's online or in hard copy. It is important for us to get the complete picture and the story of what you're looking to do with your property. Take the time to draw up the plans, use to the best of your ability, bring them to scale, show us the dimensions, how far things are from setbacks, provide us with the specs or the manufacturer's information in terms of the different materials and the details that you're looking to get approval for. Provide us with photos of what your existing conditions are, and also if you've got examples of properties either in the district or elsewhere that you're looking to emulate the same features. All of that information is super helpful for us to be able to help streamline your application through the process. Let's see, we also have the major work classification. So this is a little bit different for the items that fall under that category that define major work. Once we receive the application, again, whether it be through SmartGov or whether it be through a hard copy, once the application is complete, it would then be placed on the Historic Preservation Commission's agenda for them to review it. Staff will then prepare a staff report that will go along with the agenda item. We send out property notification letters to property owners within 100 feet of the property from the parcel line. And then we will hold the HPC, the Historic Preservation Commission meeting. They meet once a month, the second Tuesday of every month at 7 o'clock. And so they would then hear the item for the request for the certificate, and they are considered in that manner reviewing an application in a quasi-judicial hearing. So it's a formal hearing where applicants are required to present their item and testify in terms of what they're looking to do. Then the HBC can ask questions. Members of the audience can ask questions. An application can be approved with or without conditions. If the application is denied, they can either refile an application or appeal the HBC's decision to the Board of Adjustment. And then the appeal of that decision would go to Superior Court. Again, similar to the minor COAs, once the application is approved, then staff issues the certificate and also completes the yellow card. And then the applicants can apply for building permits. I'll have a slide at the end that will summarize or be helpful in terms of what things may require what types of work may require some additional permits. I see that there's a question. Do you want me to stop here and take some questions or continue on?
Hey, Jamie, I think yeah, there's a good question regarding the design review committee from one of the folks there, and they were saying they're asking about the design review committee and if that's made of the HPC members or if that's from a different group.
Yeah, so it would not be made from the current HPC members because that would create sort of a conflict if they were meeting and speaking and talking to applicants about applications that would potentially come to them going forward. So this would be kind of an advisory committee set aside from either former HPC members or members of the community, people who have an interest in architecture, in building materials and historic preservation. That would be the intent.
Great. And there's another great follow-up question regarding the mail notice to LHO landowners within 100 feet of site. Is the question is, does that notice go to properties across the street or only along the side? Does it go to property owners outside of the district?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the 100 feet is silent to the district boundaries, and so we're just basically taking a snapshot of the parcel. Our GIS department will do a 100-foot radius around that property and any property address that falls within that boundary. So it does go across streets and outside of the district. In some cases, depends on where your property is located, obviously. But yeah, we don't, we would, whatever properties fall within that, in that boundary, they would be sent out letters, advising them that there's going to be a matter that's going to the Historic Preservation Commission with the date and the time. Any other questions at this point?
It doesn't look like there are any other questions. What we'll do is, after their presentation, we'll open it back up for questions. But again, feel free to throw them in there and we'll get them answered.
Yep, that is great. So let's see. Trying to get back to the screen. Here we go. So again, the major works are the applications that require approval from the Historic Preservation Commission with a full presentation to that commission. It's not something that staff can review administratively. And there's, major types of work would be considered things like new construction, brand new homes, or brand new buildings within the historic district, major exterior alterations or repairs, additions, would go to additions in terms of a building addition or a deck, brand new deck, would go to the Historic Preservation Commission, as well as demolition of structures. And for demolitions of structures, I believe it's under our UDO that technically if there's a request to have a structure demolished, there's a delay period. I believe it's up to 365 days for the HPC to render that. And the idea is if there's a structure that's in set for demolition, or a property owner wants to do that, then there might be vested interest from the community to engage and help to protect that property. We also have demolition by neglect in our ordinance as well. But we would want to capture, if there is a demolition that is approved, we would want to be the ability to also capture, whether it be through a site visit or through photos, identify and capture the historically significant aspects of the property. Okay, moving along. So again, for new construction, we don't get these often because the historic district is fairly built out. Districts are fairly built out, but for new construction, again, the devil is in the details, right? So we would want to see a complete application that shows a site plan with all of the different dimensional requirements, show us where your building is going to be proposed. Also very important are architectural elevations that can help to identify how the structure is compatible and consistent with the historic district design standards and the district itself. And similar to a minor COA, it's always very helpful to have details associated with the different types of features and materials that you're going to be considering, and then photos as well. And this is just an example of what one might find when they're going through the historic district itself, historic district standards itself. Again, going back to what I was talking about earlier, the standards are broken into different categories for preservation, repair, and replacement in most categories. So depending upon what somebody's doing, we would hope that they would be reviewing the standards for consistency in and I'll just also say that staff does review the standards when the applications come in too, specifically for the projects that go in front of the Historic Preservation Commission. Staff will prepare a staff report that will help to identify the findings of facts, we call them, and the relevant sections of the design standards that that apply or should be called out. And in some cases, there's others that can be added as well. So the next couple slides just give a summary and an idea. If one was to open up the design standards either on the computer or in a hard copy, this is the breakdown and the table of contents of how the design standards is formulated. You've got an introduction section, the design review process, which goes through a lot of what I'm speaking about today, and more information, some context of the historic districts and the landmark properties. There's some really cool anatomic diagrams that help to visually depict how buildings are defined and different types of architectural features. So it's an educational resource for most. And then Section D talks about the design standards themselves and the different breakdowns between maintenance and alteration, starting on page D7. And then all of the different walls and foundations, roofs, chimneys, and so on, all fall under this maintenance and alterations. And then Section 2 under the design standards, subsection 2 under Section D talks about additions, and then 3 into new buildings, and 4 into outbuildings. We've got also a section on the demolition and demolition by neglect, disaster preparedness, some information about signs. Now we also have sign standards under our Unified Development Ordinance as well, murals, and some information that was provided at the end in terms of our recommended plant list. And I'll show that, as well as Appendix 2 has a table that helps to categorize what some types of work may require additional permits. And then there's a link to other applications and documents. So this just kind of shows our old school line of work dealing with when we get applications actually in and what they look like, and some information and directions on what we're looking for applicants to provide us with. And then this slide is intended to show kind of the breakdown of how you would apply online. And I'll just summarize. You would go to our city webpage and then go to the planning website, where there would be a link to the SmartGov portal. Through the SmartGov portal, you can apply for any permits that the city has, whether it be through, our department that handles the COAs, to sign permits, to different types of building permits and commercial permits or temporary permits, you name it. They're through the SmartGov portal. Once you establish an account, if you don't already have one, you would need to establish an account, have the email verified through your email. Once it's verified, then you can go back in and create a permit itself. That once it's complete, then staff kind of gets a little ding, and we can go ahead and start to review the permits. So, like I said, we take requests in both through the paper copies and through our online portal. And I could also just maybe say that through our online system, staff and others can view activities that go on properties. So available to the public as well as staff, you can identify particular parcels, click on them, and see whether or not there's been any kind of approval, different types of applications. So we use this tool internally to help track what goes on properties, but it's certainly available to the public as well. So once you actually get your account verified and you go back in and apply for a permit, for the COAs, you would select the first category to be Planning and Zoning Department. And these are, there might even be more than on this list at this point, but these are the different types of permits that the Planning Department has under our umbrella, and certificates of appropriateness fall there as well. I alluded to earlier what staff does when we receive the applications for major COAs and the ones that actually go to the Historic Preservation Commission. This is an example or a couple examples of our staff reports and kind of an overview of the application itself and the findings of facts that are applicable to the project. Again, these are some recent applications that were approved, that the applicant provided us with before and after renderings to help show what they were looking to do, and a site map. For properties that are located in Glencoe Mill, there's also a above and beyond the design standards, there's the requirement to adhere to the declarations and covenants associated with the properties up there. So the Preservation North Carolina must review and approve applications and improvements and modifications to the properties in Glencoe. We also, kind of new to the design standards, was a discussion of different types of building materials that can be permitted or may be permitted. The materials that are maybe are those that can be allowed only through applying to the HPC. I mentioned earlier how the HPC would review applications when they come in for a major COA through a quasi-judicial role. The HPC, the Historic Preservation Commission, just in kind of brief summary, has a dual role. They serve as an advisory role to the city, where there's different projects that they can undertake inventories, recommend designations to local landmarks, prepare ordinances, so on. In those functions, they serve as an advisory role. And then when the applications come into them, they have a more formal role rather than providing a recommendation. There's actually a review of the application. There's statutes and requirements that they need to follow. They can't have communication with applicants outside of the forum. And then this slide just kind of summarizes the process that's laid out by state statute that the hearing follows. So just wanted to highlight that for you all. We also have new to our design standards too, our emergency protocols where there may be situations where there's fires or flooding or tornadoes, other natural disasters, where staff and the chair of the HPC, in consultation with our building codes officials, have the authority to waive standards. So we hope that those things don't occur, but we can't predict the weather or certain circumstances, and in those situations we would want to work with property owners or applicants as quickly as possible to get work done that needed to get done in order for them to have the properties brought up to standards. And then I also mentioned earlier that the design standards have some useful tools, not just related to historic preservation, but also just kind of next steps. So we met with the Director of Inspections to help us come up with this table to identify where permits may be required or may not be required for different types of applications going forward. So just going through the Historic Preservation Commission or staff may not be your last step. There may be other permits that may be required, and also on the opposite side, if a property is located in a historic district or is a landmark site and they've applied for permits, but the type of work requires a COA, the permits won't get approved until the COA, if it's warranted, would be approved. Again, embedded within the historic district standards is the recommended plant materials list. Again, we're just trying to provide resources available to members of the community and residents, so that they have the information that we would want to see when applications come in, and recommendations consistent with what the city has required. I just wanted to put a plug in really quickly for the planning department and some of the other training that that in the past we've had, and also going forward. So this is the link to our Let's Talk series. But in addition to that, further down are other training classes that we have held virtually and in public in some cases, that deal with our pre-application conference, and the permit process, and our Unified Development Ordinance. So if you're interested in learning more about those aspects, this is a good place to start. And it's our hope that we continue to develop a library to help keep ongoing education readily available to you all and the public. So I think I'm at close to my last slide. This is just again the kind of the next steps in our lecture series. Today we were just talking about submitting the application and the standards, and then in May we'll be talking about the standards themselves and how they apply. Then in August, it's kind of our 1-year anniversary and a look back on how the standards have played out. And then in May, those other ones are in also virtually. In May, we are going to be holding a in-person tour of downtown and learn about the history of the downtown to coincide with National Historic Preservation Month. So mailers and postcards went out to property owners within the district, and we're hoping that you can help spread the word on all of the different really exciting and cool opportunities to engage the public, meet your neighbors, and just get out into the community. And hopefully May will be a really, hopefully the weather will be good, and we're excited about that opportunity to be out all together. There is a QR code down at the bottom where it will take you to a link to these different seminars as well. So I think at that point, I'm happy to try to answer any questions that you might have. I hope I didn't go too fast, but you can either put your questions directly into the chat or use the raise hand feature if you have anything specific that you'd like to ask us. If not, staff is always available to help at any point as well. So I'll open it up to the public and see if there's anybody who's interested in asking any questions.
We got a nice comment from Christy Brantley, our State Historic Preservation Office coordinator, CLG coordinator. Thank you. I'm glad that we had some
Thank you for participating. It's so happy to have you guys on.
Oh yeah. So we're joined with folks from outside of North Carolina. We've got our collaborative consultants, the Walker Collaborative with Keith and Phil. Thank you all for joining us. I see we have some members of our HPC on, our chair, Brian Pennington, and members of Preservation Burlington with Faith Grant. So just want to thank you all for taking time to meet with us. I know, Jamie, I had a question about, I needed to ask for a live demonstration on how to do something, but I can't remember what it was. Just for one question out there, but
a live demonstration in terms of navigating to the portal, or?
Yeah, let's pretend that you're landing at the city's website and you go to burlingtonnc.gov. Sure. And you're wanting to create an account and do a submittal online using the portal.
Yeah, so I will, if you can see, I am on the city's website now.
Yep, we can see that.
Okay, so there's different ways to get to the portal. Well, let me first show you where you would find the design standards. I know Conrad's been putting different things into the chat, so that's super, super helpful. But the design standards themselves, if you go to government and then planning and then historic preservation on the left side, you could do the drop down, and that will take you to the local historic district overlay design standards. And if you click on that, it'll take you to the link to the PDF. So that's I think a first resource that would be great to start to become familiar with. And then we also have the different applications on here as well. And then to get to, if you're going to be applying online, I'll just take you to kind of where you would get to the portal. Again, if you click on business and development, you can go to apply for a permit where it says SmartGov, and then proceed to the site. And at this point, you would, like I said, you'd either have to create an account through up here on the right-hand side where it says sign up or log in. You would create an account, And then if you don't have account, it has to be verified through an email. And then once it's verified, you can come back in and go to my portal and apply that way for any of the permits that are available through our portal system.
And there is a question in the chat. I'm not sure the property address for this one, but it's asking if Tommy's got removed from the district. But I'm not sure what address that property would be. But maybe there's a way to show them how they could look up the information using our online
Sure.
GIS.
So I can also take you to where you can find information about the districts and zoning itself. So this might be more interesting for those planning folks too. But to get to our mapping tools and our GIS, again, you would go down from government from our website, which is burlingtonnc.gov. You would click on the government and then planning and then GIS division. And then we have an interactive GIS map that you would proceed to the site. And from here, you would just need to accept the terms. And then there's different ways to search. Up here on the upper left-hand side, you can search by the address. If you know the address itself, you can search by the 6-digit tax code. You can search by the GPIN number. You can search by the property owner itself. If you know the area that you're looking for, you can zoom in, and hopefully I'll zoom in and it won't zoom in too far.
So it looks like the property in question is on the corner of Trollinger and West Front Street.
Okay. So this shows you the overall zoning. If you remember, I mentioned earlier that it's sort of like this cake, and the lowest level is the parcels or the actual property itself, and then we've got the zoning layer. So the medium density residential, which is in yellow, is primarily what you'll find in the historic district. In order to turn on, and hopefully this will work and I won't become embarrassed, but in order to turn on the historic district overlay, you go to the sidebar here under the layers, click on the zoning, and then click on the historic district itself. So the property that the hatch area here is also within the historic district. So I think the area that you're talking about, is right in here. I hope that answered your question. So the area that's not hatched is outside of the historic district, and the area that's hatched is in. Any other questions?
I think this is a great example of how you can cross the street and be outside of the district or in the district. So it looks like Tommy's Mini Mart is the northeast corner of that intersection, and it looks like it's just that piece of neighborhood business with that overlay. So to answer the question, it's not removed from the district. It's actually in the historic district.
And then I can also show you for those properties that are local landmarks. Let's see. Those will also be hatched as well. So you could see here, this is that Pickett Mill hosiery site that has zoning designation of GB and HI, but it also has that hatch that also identifies that they are in the local historic district overlay and would be subject to the design standards as well. So there's a variety of other properties that fall under that category too. So that gives you, there's a lot of other information on this zoning viewer, but that's just a highlight of how you could see whether or not properties are in the historic district. And then the same thing for Glencoe. this is the zoning for this area, and then Glencoe is shown in this hatch as well. Conrad, any other questions that you're seeing?
Yeah, I'm seeing some thumbs ups, thumbs up, and
Good.
I don't see any other questions on the chat or anything. So it looks like everyone that's been listening is able to feel comfortable with the process of getting a certificate of appropriateness, either a minor work or a major work, and also being able to determine that you don't, it's just normal maintenance. And I think if they have any questions, they know that they can always contact the city's planning department and get their questions confirmed or answered.
Yep, absolutely. So I want to just thank everyone for participating in this training seminar, and feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions, if you've got specific areas that you like about the new design standards, or areas that you want us to focus in on and make modifications. This is a document that is just like any other zoning ordinance and rules and regulations. It's something that we will be reviewing on an annual basis as well. So, and our phone number is in the chat. We look forward to seeing you next on May 17th.